we got right to work in this video, making some good progress on the 69. Remember in the last video, we basically rough wired up the Holley ECU, cranked the car over and built some oil pressure. So the next thing we need to add really is fuel. Did the fuel system earlier this spring, but never got to wiring it, so that's what we got right to work at this time. So let me show you what I've done. So our Tanks Inc. tank is down there. If you remember in the previous video on the fuel system, we left the relay kind of just hanging out. So I found in the trunk, the car does have a really nice TMI custom panels that closes off the whole trunk, so we'll put all that back in later. Took all that out. Looking for a place to mount the relay, I found the factory drain plug on the floor here in the trunk pans. You can see straight down to the ground there. So I ran the wire up through there, drilled a hole in there, installed the grommet, loomed, everything nice. Let me get a flashlight, hold on, bear with me. So yeah, I ran the wires through here, up through here. Relay is mounted to the wheel tub. There's a ground wire here from the relay, and then the ground power directly from the fuel pump as well. Those are both mounted here. I wire wheeled this, clean that off. Good to go there. Purple wire is wired directly to the fuel pump. This red wire runs all the way to the battery, and the yellow wire is the trigger wire. So the yellow wire, we ran down the driver's side to the green wire in the Holley, that's the trigger wire. So down behind the back seat, through the driver's door sill, and then the red wire goes directly to the battery. We did the same thing over on this side. And you can see I added the circuit breaker per Summit's instructions right there on the rear seat, and the wiring goes down the passenger side. So this will all clean up nice, put all the panels back, you'll never even know it was there, nice, protected from the elements. Didn't really want to have this entire interior part, but here we are. Like I said, ran the wires down here under these sill plates, all loomed, nice and neat, and right into the factory, or the Holley green ECU wire. Same thing for the red wire on the driver's side, through this door sill. I already put all that back together, up through the firewall, and I actually ran it through the existing hole in grommet for the vintage air system. So this is still loose, still have to clean all this up, but that's all wired up. So we are at the point where we can test this. So I think when I saw in the tune, I should hit the key and we should get a 5-second prime. So let's hook the battery up here and hit the key and see if we get a prime. All right, battery's hooked up. So when we turn the key to the on position, if I can find the keys, we should get a 5-second prime. Should hear the fuel pump. There you go. Perfect. So that all seems like it's working perfectly. Fuel pump came on for 5 seconds and then shut off. I think the next thing we should do is hook up our fuel line and get some fuel in this thing and see if we build pressure and have any leaks. So there's our regulator, feed and return. Here's our feed line over to our 6AN to stock GM fuel rail adapter. Snap that guy on. I'm gonna double check all those connections, make sure everything's tight. I haven't touched this fuel system since March or April when I did this, so I'm gonna make sure all those AN connections are tight. We'll put some fuel in this thing and see if we can build some pressure and hopefully have no leaks. Oh, I wish just once these things wouldn't leak. 5-ish gallons of fresh 93. All right, you guys stay up here and watch for leaks. All right, fuel's in the tank. Let's see what happens, see if we have any leaks. You can hear the pump picking up some fuel. A little bit of resistance. What do we got? Hey-o! 45-ish PSI right on the nose. Awesome. So all right, let's go check for leaks. Visual inspection at all of our points here, including the filter under the car and the actual fuel pump itself in the back. No leaks, so that's awesome. Right now I think I'm gonna get cleaned up in the trunk here. Got some seam sealer So we can put this back together, get this all vacuumed out, cleaned up, put all these panels back in. I've still got some wiring to finish up here. All this stuff is still rough. I need to wire up our trigger wire for the starter, get the headers back in. I'm gonna clean up the interior, get the rear seat back in, just start to get organized a little bit. On an unrelated note, going back to our transmission builds back this winter, transmission's been in the car for a couple months now. I just got my shifter and shift knob, and I realized we have a little problem. So let me show you. Here's our Hurst Blackjack shifter. Transmission does great in 3rd gear, 4th, 5th, 6th, but it will not go over into 1st and 2nd gear. It's like it's not allowed to go over far enough. So long story short, did some research on this. One other thread on the internet came up with some guy who did this exact same thing and had this exact problem, so I'm almost positive it's mine. I made, if you guys remember, I made this little mid-shift cover plate. You can barely see it under there. Those are the 2 back bolts right there. You can hear something hitting in there when you try and go into 1st and 2nd, and apparently the Magnums, the shift rod or whatever it is, it uses, or it needs a little bit more clearance than a normal T56 does. So your T56 Magnum mid-shift plate is clearance for that. So I got this one from Texas Drivetrain Performance. Got here in literally one day. It was like 35 bucks. So I'm gonna see if I can get that swapped out without dropping the transmission. I think I got a little bit of room right there and maybe a little bit under, but I think this is gonna solve our problem. So it appears my homemade mid-shift plate is not gonna work after all, but if this, a $35 fix, is, you know, all that went wrong in my complete transmission overhaul, having never done it before, I mean, I'll take that. So that's on the list too. So I'm gonna start knocking some of this stuff out, and I'll check in with you guys in a little bit, but man, we are really close to trying to fire this thing up. We've got fuel, we've got our ignition wired, we've got everything, basically everything that needs to be done. I'm just gonna go through everything, double check my wires, clean some stuff up, and I'll check in with you guys in a little bit, but we're getting close. All right, update time. So we got the alternator wiring all done. Not really too much to show for it, but I think that's a good thing. Nice clean wiring all the way down to the alternator. We got our 1 gauge power wire down the back, and then we have our basically our sense and our trigger wires in this loom as well. So that's all neat and tidy. Alternator wiring is done. I took the headers out, welded the V-bands on, and heat wrapped the bottom. I'll show you. You'll be able to see on the passenger side. You can see the heat wrap down there. And the reasoning for that is because it's going to be kind of close to those coil packs, which you can also see. So that's what it looks like under there. So those are good. V-bands welded on, ready to go. Also, while we're under here, got our wideband O2 sensor for the Holly threaded in, plugged in. Still need to tuck up the wiring, but we'll do that. So headers are back in finally with gaskets, hopefully for the last time. Dipstick and dipstick tube is in. Spark plug wires are back on. Obviously spark plugs are back in. Both sides. Fuel line is connected. All of our power steering lines are connected. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we're just about ready. You know, got a lot done. Like I said, not a ton to show for it here. It still looks basically the same, but everything is hooked up. Everything is ready to go. All of our wiring is still a little bit rough around the edges, but everything is where it needs to be. So last things, a few things we need to do. Looking at my list, it's circled because it's important, and you don't want fluids. We have to top off the engine oil because I only put a few quarts in when we were priming the motor. So you need to top that off. You need to put some transmission fluid in the car. Now that I got those plugs in there, which I think I showed, you know, I'm not going to be using the vehicle speed sensor from the T56 because I'm going to be using the Holly GPS speed. So we got those plugs in there, so now we can put fluid in that. I just want oil in the motor and transmission fluid in the transmission, just if we want to do a quick startup. There's no cooling system or nothing, so if we fire this thing off, it's only going to run for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, then we'll shut it down. So not really worried about anything else, but stuff that's going to be spinning, we want fluid in there. We can check for leaks. Also, just as I suspected, the mid-shift plate cover that I made when I first rebuilt the transmission, that was in fact the cause of our non-shifting into first and second issue. So I got the billet mid-shift cover from Texas Drivetrain Performance in there. Transmission shifts perfectly now. So anyone doing a T56 Magnum, you need the plate with the clearance on it. Lesson learned. In the meantime, I've made a giant mess with all this wiring and welding and all that other stuff, you know, over the past day or so. So I'm gonna get this cleaned up. Let's go get some fluids, get them in the car, do some last minute checks, and see if we can't get this thing to fire off. So we got fresh oil in the motor, filled the transmission up with fresh transmission fluid. I've double checked everything up here, got no fuel leaks. I think all my wires are clear of the headers for now anyway. Still got a little bit more work to do there. No dry belt on because we don't have any coolant in the motor. So we won't know if the alternator is working yet, but like I said, the goal is to hopefully just run this thing for 30, 45 seconds, just see if it seems to be firing on all 8. See if it does anything at all. Who knows, you know? My first LS swap, first Holly Terminator, you know, I've got plenty of experience with LS motors, but who knows? We'll see what happens. I have double checked all the instructions, sensor verification, and we've checked everything in the tune. Looks good as far as I can tell. We're in neutral. We've obviously got power where we need it. I'm gonna set you guys up outside on the GoPro, and we'll also be in here with me. let's give this thing a shot. See what happens. All right, key on. Fuel pump primes, has pressure. Neutral. Let's connect to the ECU here. Everything looks good. Let's open up our gauges. We have an air fuel reading this time. Everything else looks good. Here goes nothing. Woo! Just about blew out my eardrum. Let's try it again. All right, we got a whole lot of backfiring, sputtering. Let's double check everything and I'll get back with you guys. All right, so we did some digging and I think I might have found what was going on. Those of you guys who were listening and maybe watching, there's a lot of backfiring going on there. And I think I even heard a backfire through the intake, which tells us that there's probably some sort of timing issue. And this was something that I was kind of worried about from the get-go because I don't remember how close of attention I paid when I was, hooking these coils back up with the coil relocation kit that I did. So I think I might have found a mistake. So if we come under the car, I've got my coil packs up there. Thought I was being smart, labeling them 1357, which is the driver's side bank. 7 is kind of hidden over on the frame rail over there. But so that all looks fine. Those are all appear to be hooked to the correct actual cylinder. But then I'm wondering about the connection of the actual coil packs themselves to the harness. Obviously the computer's got to tell the coil pack when to fire correctly, and they have to be hooked up correctly in order for that to happen. So we go on the interwebs and pull up the LS3 coil wiring diagram. We see on coil number 1 we should have the colors pink, purple, black, and brown. So we go on up to coil number 1. What do we got? Pink, brown, black, and red. So that doesn't match. Went through the rest of these and none of them matched. Turns out what happens is the wiring for number 1 is on number 7. The wiring for number 3 is on number 5. So basically this entire thing is backwards. So when I put this harness back on, I connected it in the complete opposite order. So basically every cylinder on the driver's side bank here was not firing at the correct time. So I'm gonna correct that. I think that should take care of our issue. One other thing I was thinking about while I was, thinking about this is fuel pressure. LS engines typically run a base pressure of, I think, like 58 PSI. That's with a regulator and vacuum hooked up. We don't have that hooked up, so I think I'm gonna crank this fuel regulator up to like 55-ish, see if that does any better. So with those two things, we'll give this another shot. The timing alone should, this thing should run. We already heard it kind of stumble a little bit, basically running on 4 cylinders. So let's get the other ones hooked up correctly, get this thing back down, and try this again. All right, so I think I got our ignition problem sorted out. The passenger side bank, or bank 2, was fine. I had that all correct. This side was just completely backwards. I think I've got that sorted. Also cranked fuel pressure up to like 55-ish PSI, I think, which is closer to where LS should be. So those are the only 2 things I've changed. Only problem is, got kind of laid out, and I don't want to start this thing up, piss the neighbors off. Oh wait, I don't have any neighbors. Let's do this. I feel bad for you HOA guys. It's like 11 o'clock at night right now. We're just about to fire this thing up, open headers. Here we go. Key forward, fuel pump primes. All right, let's try this. Oh my goodness. Holy All right, let's make sure nothing's on fire here. Warm, 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 warm. All right, I think we're firing on all 8. I had to use the gas a little bit right there to get it to idle, but that definitely sounded like it was running on all 8, and all 8 primaries are warm. Maybe the air, startup tune needs a little bit of airflow work, but seems like it runs. We had, I think, 47 pounds of oil pressure right there. I think I'm gonna do this one more time, and we'll log it just so we're sure. But we can check the vitals later. But let's do this again. Open up a couple more doors here, and see what everything looks like. Next day here. I was gonna end the video last night, but I couldn't leave you guys hanging. Decided to do a little bit more research today. I think I have some ideas to get this thing to idle a little better, based on my internet research. So let's go through what I changed. So if we look at the tune file, the main thing I changed was, let's see, I brought our idle speed up just slightly. I mean, in the coolant temp range that we're talking about, really nothing at all, and we're not letting it warm up yet, but I brought this up a little bit. But the main thing we changed here, and I watched a video on this, I can link in the description if anyone's interested. There's a video on how to get the drive-by-wire to idle with the Holley Terminator. Apparently this is a somewhat common issue. And this is the chart that I think saved my life. Well, actually it's 2 parts, but basically this was down here. So this is the throttle pedal position versus pedal position chart. So basically this is saying that when pedal position is 0, throttle position should also be 0. But since a drive-by-wire throttle body does not have an idle air control valve, or IAC, basically you need to move the throttle to open about 10% when the pedal's not doing anything, essentially to act as your idle air control, that's how I understand it anyways. So move this whole thing up. That was the one big one. The other thing I did, which I was concerned about anyways, was our O2 sensor is right there, and it is right by the collector, which means it's likely gathering information from the outside air, aka telling the motor that it's lean when really it's not. So I went into closed loop / learn, and we unchecked the box that says enable closed loop, because at this time, just with open headers, just to see how the car, if it's going to run, I don't want any feedback from that O2 sensor, because it's basically just going to tell the car that it's lean and dump in a bunch of fuel that it doesn't need. So we unchecked that. And then I also unchecked the box here that says base fuel learn enabled. We don't want any learning or anything like that. We want the car to run based solely on the inputs that we've given it and what it's seeing from the main sensors, like the manifold sensor, air intake temp, throttle body, injector info, just the core speed density stuff that this car is going to need. So I think that this is going to help. Seems like it's helped a lot of people in the past, so let's give this a quick shot, see if we can get this thing to idle. Oh my goodness. That hurts. That hurts my ears. Maybe I got sensitive ears or something, but that is obnoxious. Woo! That's what we needed, boys. Our 1969 Camaro, idling, sounded like a goddamn pro stock car. All right, so I was looking real quick. We obviously, like I said, didn't want to run this for too long, but I saw 50 pounds of oil pressure at idle. I think I took a log so we can check that out, but everything else looked good. We're definitely firing on all 8. Let's just take a moment, soak this all in. After 8 months, we have a running LS3 swapped, 6-speed swapped, 69 Camaro. BTR stage 4 cam, all supporting valve train mods, long tube headers, painted parts. We still got to get our valve covers on, but I mean, this thing sounds insane. The cam sounds awesome, the valve train sounds nice and healthy, nice and smooth, from what I can hear over the obnoxiously loud open headers. We solved our coil issue, or a coil wire mismatch issue, or wired incorrectly issue. We know we're firing on all 8. Oil pressure's good, the motor seems very healthy. So we can't ask for more than that. The car seems to be idling pretty well. I still have a lot more work to do in the software, getting to know it and getting to learn it, and probably some more idle tuning to do, but I'll take that. It's idling on its own now. It seems to run well. I can't run it that long because there's no coolant, no water, nothing in the motor. But I'm happy with how that's running right now. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. The goal for this one was to get a running LS3 swap Camaro, and that's what we got. So I'm happy to end this off here. In the next video, we've got to get a radiator in this thing, measure for a drive shaft, get the drive shaft in, and hopefully have a driving 69 LS swap Camaro. So plenty to do, plenty of parts going on, plenty of parts coming in from, you know, mail and this and that, but you guys are not going to want to miss the next video. Got more coming on the twin turbo Z06, so stay tuned for that video. I just picked up another new project last week. You guys are not going to want to miss that, so keep commenting, liking, subscribing. Love hearing what you guys have to say, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.